learned so much from all the speakers before and also a little bit of beatboxing, right? So it's been a fun day so far, and I know John T. Rhodes is following up, so you guys better catch your seats here. The name of our topic, Rise, is Brace for Impact, preparing your business for the Gen AI wave. And before we talk about business, I'd like to share a personal story about my Gen AI experience. The beautiful girl you see on the screen is not AI generated. She's my 5-year-old daughter, Riley. She gets her good looks from her mom and a little bit of stubbornness from her dad, right? Riley is daddy's little girl. She's got me wrapped around her little finger. Everything's great until I have to go for a business trip. And then this is what it looks like, right? So I have to cajole a 5-year-old girl to let me out of the door. And this has resulted in a lot of frustrated Uber drivers calling me, and snoozing in the car. So the only way I can get out of this situation is if I write creative poems for Riley and kind of draw cards, right, for her. And there's only so many poems a dad can manufacture about unicorns and Peppa Pig, right? I mean, that's it. So I'd like to think that I was the first dad adopter of ChatGPT. It made my life so much easier and got me out of the door much faster, right? And come to think of it, right? With ChatGPT, I think AI really got personal, right? Before November 2022, when we thought about AI, there was a level of personalization to it, right? It was always below the surface. Netflix figured out what was the best TV shows and movies you like to watch. Amazon figured out what were the best products to sell you. Meta had information about you that would probably be illegal. I mean, it's crazy, right? But AI was always below the surface. The conversational element of feeling that you're talking to another human being came out first with ChatGPT, right? And that's when we really thought it was personal. Now, before I go on, how many of us here have used ChatGPT in our personal lives? Awesome. AI conference, expecting 100%. Keep your hands up if your organization has provided a safe access to ChatGPT, right, for work. Good, there are a few hands, but very, very few, right? And this is exactly what a McKinsey report tells us, right? Not most organizations are harnessing the full potential of Gen AI, right? 90% want to, but around 20% do it often. And this Gen AI is such a general purpose technology that it can be used in multiple use cases across multiple functions, right? From marketing to sales, customer service, product development. The question is, where do you start? Do you just experiment randomly, or is there a method to the madness, right? We could either focus on growth potential, or we could focus on cost optimization. Allow me to share a new perspective. We like to think about using Gen AI to create delightful human experiences. And if we can do that at scale and impact a lot of lives, we believe that we'll be able to generate more revenue and save a lot of cost. So what we're going to talk about today is 3 key points. The first one is our approach to AI innovation. We're going to share practical use cases and demos of incorporating Gen AI at Merkle and Dentsu. And finally, we're going to cap it off with takeaways and our point of view on Gen AI. So the process of thoughtfully adopting AI into your business, right? We've broken it down into 3 pillars. The first one is empower. I think a lot of speakers have spoken about this. It's basically giving your employees who are closest to your customers access to experiment safely with this technology. The second one is optimize, right? How do you integrate Gen AI into your business processes? Start slow off with experimentation and then scale it up. And the third one is really rethink the way you want to take your service offering ahead, right? And that's the pillar we're calling evolve. Now, what we're going to do is go through each pillar. Shaji and I are going to talk about each pillar. We're going to cover the context. We're going to show you some demos, and then cap away with takeaways for each of these 3 pillars, right? So I'll cover the first one, which is empower, and then hand it over to Shaji for the remaining. So with Empower, the goal is to enhance the human potential, right? And the way we're going to do that, the first thing we did when ChatGPT was launched is early this year, the organization formulated an org-wide AI connective, right? Now, this is a massive organization. Dentsu is almost 50,000 folks plus, and Merkle is 14,000. So we had to really get the leaders from all different practice areas and business functions together to form a core team. Now, these leaders spoke about a lot of different areas. There was a lot of thought leadership being developed about our point of view to customers. What are the sort of partnerships we need to establish? What kind of infrastructure and foundation is needed to really enable this tech to be used within our business? And then look at innovative use cases, all within the purviews of legal, security, and ethical guidelines, right? The intent was always to create an org-wide AI community where education, knowledge sharing, and solution sharing were at the forefront. And one of the ways we went ahead doing this is creating an AI COE, which is a team, a centralized team that was responsible for getting infrastructure and accesses to services, right? This team was also responsible for setting up training curriculums, certifications, and hackathons. But we really believe that the best innovations come from the folks on the ground, right? So while this central team was enabling it, most of our use cases came out from guys on the floor who had access to the tools and technologies to experiment, right? So innovative client solution ideas, whether it was optimizing internal business processes, or really rapid prototypes and experimentations, right? Creating a prototype in a week or 2 weeks max and showcasing the potential of an idea. All of this came from citizen developer initiatives that we had launched. And what I'm going to do is talk about 3 small use cases in this Empower pillar. One of them that we did was actually putting ChatGPT in the hands of everybody at Merkle and Dentsu, right? We call this Dentsu GPT, and it sits within your organization's teams as a Teams chat. So here's a quick preview of what Dentsu GPT can do, right? Now this is Brian, he's an EVP of the AI COE, and he's basically asking it to generate points for his presentation, right? So this kind of tech can be used by technical and non-technical folks within your organization, right? It's got the highest leverage ever. And this is beautiful because all of this is really within the organization boundaries, hosted on a private infrastructure in partnership with Microsoft, right? So data is not leaving our organization. All right, so this was the first case. The second one is more for engineering teams, right? Now, we did win a large short-term project, which required us to staff a 45-member team within 60 days, right? That's a little unrealistic considering you have to hire, train, and absorb. But luckily, we had our hands on GitHub Copilot, right? And this technology is amazing, right? The assistive coding features are really mind-blowing. So the productivity was so high that we actually ended up operationalizing a 19-member team instead of 45, right? All within a matter of close to around 45 days. We saved time on hiring, training, and our operational efficiency skyrocketed to a massive 58%, right? And this is very close to the benchmark numbers that GitHub shares, which is around 55%. And finally, the last case is, I'm sure if you have been following Microsoft closely in the news, is the whole M365 Copilot that they've been launching, right? So everybody here is, again, a user of Microsoft Office. And Microsoft is launching a Copilot for Office, right? It's also gone ahead and said it's going to indemnify users from any legal issues. So that makes it very, very lucrative for enterprises to adopt this technology. Now, luckily, Merkle and Dentsu were one of the partners who got paid preview access to this technology, where we could actually use it and give feedback back to Microsoft on Copilot, right? So while there were a host of use cases, I think one use case about Teams really came out, right? Most of us here have been late for a meeting, either stuck in Bangalore traffic or having an extended break with our co-workers. We find ourselves late to meetings, right? And what's the first thing we do when you get in a meeting? We bother our co-workers and ask, hey, what's going on? Let's see how the future is going to look like. Now, this is my colleague, Mithun. He's joined in fashionably late, around 8 to 10 minutes, not recommended. And all he's asking Copilot to do is recap the meeting for him, right? So within seconds, he's going to get a response from the meeting transcript of everything that was discussed in the meeting. This, my friends, is amazing. And this is just one use case, right? With M365 Copilot, I don't want to sell Microsoft too often, but this is going to be a real game changer. Now I'm going to just cap it off with 3 takeaways from the Empower pillar. The first one is really creating a federated structure, right? Create that central team that is responsible for procuring license, accesses, and can control the safety of these things. Look at English is going to be the most powerful programming language, right? I mean, so teach everybody prompt engineering. A little bit is not that bad. It's probably a 1-hour course. And third, really forge partnerships, right? This space is evolving so fast that putting all your eggs in one bucket or all your LLMs in one bucket, is really risky. So have a few partnerships, experiment a bit more in this area, and don't get locked in. Now for the next pillar, I'd like to call upon Shaji, who will take us through Optimize.
Thank you, Joel. So I'll just continue with the second pillar, which is basically optimize your business process. So based on our experience, we have just put up with a 6-point roadmap to optimize. So essentially, you encourage your teams to do decentralized business process reviews and, figure out what ideas come out where you can have GenAI intervention. And, you can, of course, track the metrics and what evals you need to do. And, ensure that you do rapid prototyping to test those ideas, right? And you can always, surface these ideas up to the center of excellence, in the AI center of excellence in your organization, so that you can cross-pollinate these ideas as well as do this idea deduplication and things like that, right? And then you can plan to move this to production, of course. The ideal way to start small, figure out a beta testing group, push out your ideas, and then while always thinking about the scale. And finally, last but not least, you should have a lens, through which you're going to view. I mean, it's like the security, the legal, all those aspects should be covered because, this is especially important if you're working in a creative space, right? So I'm just going to, give you a brief description about a particular example we had in optimizing the business process, right? This was specifically in the media service line and the paid search business, okay? So the use case is basically responsive search ads. So moving on, I just want to give you an example of what a search ad is. I mean, I'm sure everybody knows, but just you do a search, right? And then you get sponsored results, which are basically search ads. The green box indicates the landing page, the red indicates the headlines, and the blue indicates your descriptions. So the key task for a paid search associate is to actually come up with these catchy phrases that you saw, the headlines and descriptions, so that will prompt the users to click and go through, right? Now imagine if you are in their shoes, right? You have to come up with these catchy phrases and things like that. And not only that, there are other constraints. Headlines can only be 30 characters. Descriptions can be only 90 characters. So you have to apply all of these constraints and creative thoughts and so on and so forth. So let's look at how a responsive search ad looks like. So at design time, you have to come up with it's a combination of headlines, description, and the landing page URL, right? But you have to come up between 3 to 15 headlines and 2 to 4 descriptions, right? So you can imagine how much more times this creative juices has to be applied, right? And so what happens is when you configure this, Google automatically takes this over at runtime. Using its ML technologies, it's able to push out an ad, which is what you're going to see, which is a combination of 3 headlines and 2 descriptions along with the landing page, right? So that's how this process works. Now, just moving on. So what is the challenge that we have, right? Obviously, one, this is a manual time-consuming process because a paid search associate would have to actually go through the landing page, review the product characteristics, figure out what are the USPs and the offers and things like that, right? And then remember the length constraint and all we talked about. And then there is also this call to action, the best practices that has to be adopted, and all of that, right? And this means it requires an ongoing creative process. And at the scale at which we operate, because there is almost like thousands of text ads active at any given point in time for about more than 100 organizations at any given point in time, right? So, so how did we go about resolving this? So we created an end-to-end automated system, right? And this also had a GenAI component in it. And that's what you're seeing here. So this essentially is powered by Azure OpenAI APIs, the enterprise version that's private to us. And inputs to that GenAI is essentially things what a paid search associate would work with, right? The brand, the landing page, keyword search, and things like that. And the output is, the app will actually consider all the search best practices, the call to action and all of that, and create this output which is relevant headlines and descriptions, okay? So just a quick demo. This is just a small piece of what we did, this specifically to demo the GenAI part. So you're entering the landing page URL, the brand, the offers, right? And you're entering the location, and you just press this generate, right? So in under 2 minutes, you actually get a bunch of headlines along with their length, and you also get a bunch of descriptions here along with the length, right? So it has all the call to action and everything. So just imagine the life of a paid search associate now, right? He's got his first draft, right, in under 2 minutes. And so the productivity gains is so much more, right? So the architecture that this particular app had is an agent-based architecture. So there were 3 agents. The web crawling agent that actually extracts content from the website, the research agent, which actually summarizes all of this content, and the copy generation agent that takes this summarized content as well as the best practice instructions and so on and so forth, and generates these headlines and descriptions. That's the tech stack there. We use Python, LangChain, and Azure OpenAPI, right? So key takeaways on the optimized pillar. So when you go around, getting these ideas to, optimize your business process, just make sure that you do quick POCs to test. It's better to fail fast, right? And then, you understand the cost. So you do a cost simulation. You need to know what API types you're going to use, how many API hits are going to happen in a single process instance, how many users are going to use this process. So that gives you an idea of the cost, right? And finally, human should be there in the loop. So we're not saying that this is all automated. So it's, GenAI should augment and not replace. So now we move on to the third pillar, which is, evolving your organization, right? So this is just an observation, right? We're going to see a big change in the way users interact with software. So, today you do this point and click, interaction with the software. But what is going to happen is that, it's going to be more of a conversational type of interaction. So you ask and you shall receive types, right? So how can this be made possible, right? The key element here is your enterprise business, data, right? The business context. So some thoughtful, user interaction design, with Gen AI, which is turbocharged with your enterprise data, can actually result in that sweet spot of that delightful user experience, right? And this can actually transform your business. And So at this point, because we're talking about data, I just want to introduce this concept of large knowledge models. This was first referred to by Mark Cuban of the Shark Tank fame, right? So, so this LKM is not a standard terminology, so to say, but we like to use it because it's an easy reference to models that have access to the business knowledge, right? The enterprise data, right? So, so it becomes LKM, large knowledge model, and as opposed to LLMs, which are just pre-trained on mostly public data sets. So ways to build your LKM. We'll talk about three approaches in the increasing order of cost, complexity, and customization. So the first one is prompting with context, right? This is essentially, you don't change anything on the model itself. The model weights are not changed. I want to call out an important or an interesting technique here, which is the retrieval augmented generation. So what happens here is essentially, a user's query is intercepted, and based on the query context, some business data is actually augmented with this query and then sent to the LLM. So now LLM has the context, right? So the good part over here is that the risk of hallucination is very less, and you have more fresh data because you're augmenting it at runtime, right? And next one is the fine-tuning, right? So this is useful when you want to bring in a specialized domain context into the model, right? So a good example is Google's MedPalm 2, which is in the medical domain. And this was essentially instruction fine-tuned on Google's Palm 2 base model, right? Incidentally, this model actually scores more than 86% in US medical exam type of questions, right? And here the weights are modified, so a key thing. This is training from scratch. You're completely calculating the weights from scratch. You're doing it from beginning. And a perfect example, and before that, this is very expensive. So you would do this if you have tons of money and of course, lots of data, right? So perfect example is this Bloomberg GPT by Bloomberg, right? They trained this from scratch with about 40 years of finance data that they had, right? So this is, so these are the three techniques. So I just want to share one example, of marketing analytics use case. It's part of a wider set of solution and capabilities called GenCX that we have, right? So this use case is to find and target new customers. So for those of you who are not familiar with lookalike audience, this is just a quick primer. So I'm let's say from a financial services company in the United States, and I've got this, my existing customer database, but I want to expand beyond that, right? So I have this panel database, right? The consumer panel database, which is the whole US population. And I want to target, but I don't want to target the entire population. I want to make it specific, right? So it's efficient targeting. So what do? I can segment my own customers, and I know, I have this high value customer segment, right? It could have different attributes, like maybe ages between 30 to 45, or, they are executive folks and things like that, right? Now, what you do is you essentially combine this, you do a lookalike generation based on this lookalike, and you're actually getting a target audience which you can target, which is not your customers, but part of the population, and looks like this high-value customer. So this is a quick demo. Like I said, it's a small part of the entire GenCX. So as you can see, there are many capabilities. We are going for the audience studio here, and then we go into audience. This is also a conversational approach, right? So there are a lot of question answers that you can do with this application. So here, the question was how many segments are there, and it is displaying those segments, right? You have those high-value customer segments there. So what we are doing now is creating a lookalike audience. We have just selected that high value as the reference, and then we are generating the new audience, right? So you get this new audience, along with the similarity score, right? So you can pick this new audience list based on that similarity score and activate, which means you can push it for the, for the marketing purposes, right? So just a few takeaways. So there is a lot of LLMs out there. You have this, open source and proprietary, so many of them. So you need to figure out which one is the right one for your use case. So you need to experiment on that. And also about the right approach, right? We talked about three approaches at least. And, most of the times, a RAG-based approach should be enough. So you can, you might also have to try out some other options too, but yeah, get the approach right. And finally, about user interaction. So we mentioned, that the user interaction is going to change in a big way, right? So, it's going to be all conversational as we move forward. That will actually have a transformation effect also. So to conclude, we have covered these, a framework of 3 pillars, which is the empower, optimize, and evolve, right? At least this is how we, went along this journey, and some of the examples that we showed is what we experienced, right? So I just want to close by saying that, GenAI is actually creating an experiential shift in the way that we build as well as consume softwares, right? And for those of you who are wondering what ChatGPT responded to Joel's query, right? This is what it is. And, thank you, Sam Altman, for all the, the poetry challenge dads out there, right? So, yeah. So that brings us to a close. You can connect with us at the Merkle booth on first floor. We are open to any questions.
We have time for 2 questions. So in case you all would like to ask questions, we have time for 2 questions.
Hi, thank you. That was a very insightful presentation. Here,
Yeah.
am I audible, visible?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much. It was a very insightful presentation. I got the fancy of word RAG towards the end of your presentation. But the question really is, can you elaborate a little more on how are you using RAG? How are you building RAG within your organization? I think that is kind of a link between having a secure exposure to the LLM, which is the outside world, and creating something within your world. So a little more on RAG. Thank you.
You want to know more about RAG?
How you are using RAG, use cases that...
Yeah. So we are also, on this particular case, we are also experimenting. So on the RAG approach, it is, you can use it for, things like policy documents or stuff like that, where you want to inject, the business context as the user query comes in.
Hi, I'll go next. Hi Joel, hi Shaji, very good presentation. Of the 3 pillars you spoke about, empower, optimize and evolve, which has been the toughest one to democratize and to kind of, the most challenging one of the 3? And what is it that we can learn or be cautious of? Because I think most of the organizations are in a similar journey. So just wanted your perspective on that.
So the most toughest one clearly is the last one, right? Which is basically training from scratch. And that is not something that most companies would do, okay? First of all, you need a lot of, you need a lot of data and plus a lot of compute, which means you need a lot of, it's going to cost you a bomb to actually build one from scratch. So I would say that in most cases, you would, most organizations would not go the train from scratch route. Instead, you might go for a RAG-based approach, the first one, or even a fine-tuning approach also. Because we have done, supervised fine-tuning on some base models, the second option, right? So, yeah.
I can actually add a little bit of context. I mean, technically, the third pillar is difficult. But if you look at it and if you have scale in your organization, right, a lot of employees, I think getting them on that common platform, because you can give them access to the tools, but then that doesn't mean they're going to use it automatically, right? There's a lot of coaxing, a lot of education and all that's involved. It's like basically planting a bamboo tree, right? You have to keep nurturing it, keep watering it until you get the returns on it. So it's not technically difficult, but it's very, it's a lot of sweat and blood that goes in from a central team to kind of push this thing there. Once you have that foundation set, then I think you start seeing the benefits of it quite rapidly. So that's just to add that context.